nail the hook in our ad, or that we didn't make our offer clear enough on the landing page, or it was not congruent with the advertisement, or it was the offer itself wasn't very compelling, or it didn't like it was just this. Everyone's coming in and saying, yeah, I kind of want that, but this is actually my issue. We're not solving the core problem. So it's always in the details. It's always in the sifting through the many small things that you find the kernel that ends up fixing the business. I mean, I know that Facebook was trying to fix their virality issue, and they were locked in a room for days trying to figure out how they could get more users to retain on the platform, right? People would sign up, but then they wouldn't do anything, and then they'd drop out. And so finally, Zuck just said, okay, we have some belief that if people have more friends, that they will engage. And so they didn't, and here's the thing, like with the uncertainty, they couldn't prove it. He just was like, I feel like that's better than them not having friends. And so he said, all right, the new goal is 10 friends in 14 days. That's the goal. So we have to create the experience so that we can get it to introduce them to 10 people or connect them with 10 people that they already know on the platform within 14 days. And as soon as that happened, then obviously Facebook took off or continued to grow. And so he wasn't like, oh, Facebook doesn't work anymore or social networks aren't going to be a thing. It's usually way smaller and the adjustment you need to make is much more nuanced than what you originally expect. If the foundational principle of like cutting hair, mowing lawns, whatever, it's like this problem exists and I can charge a certain amount and make a profit on it, then there's nothing wrong with the business. It's just what is the constraint that's holding us back? And then usually zooming into the constraint and realizing there's 20 things that are contributing to the outcome, not one. And that's where expertise and you develop that expertise by trying and failing.
Yeah.
And that's just the name of the game. And so I think you have to have an incredibly high tolerance for failure without internalizing it and feeling like you yourself are a failure as a result of failure.
Well, this is it. When I started my first business at 18 years old called Wallpark, social network, whatever, I thought the game was to be right.
Yeah.
I came to learn from businesses that came after that actually the game of entrepreneurship is to be successful. And they're two very different things.
To win.
Because when you want to be right, you not only want to be CEO and you want your hypothesis that you put in that first pitch deck to come true. And even when customers are telling you that you were wrong, you try and force the fucking hypothesis.
You don't know.
Yeah. But when your game is to be successful, there's a couple of really interesting things that I observe happen. One of them is I watch founders say, actually, maybe I'm not the best person to be CEO.
Yeah.
Even though I founded this thing, maybe I should be chief brand officer. When I think about some of the top companies in the UK represent just valued at 100 million, Gymshark, Ben's business valued at 1.5 billion, Julian's business probably valued at $1 billion. I'm involved in some of these businesses in different ways. But the thing they all have in common is at some early point, the founder put their ego secondary to the success of the business. They said, actually, I'm not the best CEO. I should be head of brand or marketing.
Or product, right.
Or product or whatever it is. And that's that mindset shift from being, I need to be right and I need to be at the helm of being right versus this thing needs to be successful.
And this goes back to the who, which is if you at some point, if you want to have a really ridiculously successful company, it will require more lifetimes of expertise than you can live. And so then it becomes a recruiting game. Like very quickly, almost all business becomes recruiting, which is how do I mean, if you listen to Zuck talk about it, you listen to Elon talk about it, you listen to Steve Jobs talk about it. Steve would talk about how the best players that he had in the company, he would set aside like a year to 18 months to bring them in.
Amen.
And he said, every time I knew who I wanted. And then he's like, I would take some calls with other people and I would just be like, but they're not John. They're not John. And so he would just keep working on them and working on them and working on them. And so eventually they're like, you know what? Fine. They like give up. And they're like, if this guy is this persistent, like he probably will be a successful entrepreneur and he will take us there. And I think that like people are the highest leverage thing that you can bring into the company outside of, crazy technology.
One of my favorite videos of all time is where Steve Jobs, who you just mentioned, talks about hiring truly exceptional people. And he says words to the effect, I'll play it on screen. He says, people think the success of Apple is a consequence of me and my talent and my skills. But what I've actually done is I've built my career, quote, on hiring truly exceptional people, doing the extremely hard work of finding them and hiring them. And this crazy thing happens when you do that is it propagates. i.e., A players then want to work with A players. They also hire A players and it spreads. I think it was this video.
I've built a lot of my success off finding these truly gifted people and not settling for B and C players, but really going for the A players. And I found something. I found that when you get enough A players together, when you go through the incredible work to find, 5 of these A players, they really like working with each other because they've never had a chance to do that before. And they don't want to work with B and C players. And so it becomes self-policing, and they only want to hire more A players. And so you build up these pockets of A players, and it propagates.
The thing is that it's just like money won't make you happy. It's one of those things that like every founder like has to figure out for themselves. But the thing is I've had obviously a bunch of conversations around this, but like what you think is an A player today is not what you will think an A player is in 5 years. And so I think one of the hardest mental hacks around this is trying to project yourself into the future, into the size business that you want to have, and say who would be an A player at that size and scale. And then coming back to the present and saying, how do I get them to work for me today?
Amen.
And it's really, and so as a mental process for anybody who does have a business right now and has some employees, if you, like everybody right now, you probably have some version of your A player because every business has at least one, hopefully, right? Besides you. Imagine your business had 5 of those people. Like you picture in your head, you've got that one person, now you have 5 of them. How much more would you make? Would you double? Would you 10x? Would you 50x? And sometimes you realize you're like, no, I think I would actually 10x. And so if that were the case, one, not only would you 10x the company, number 2, the value of the company would more than 10x because it would no longer be, it would be significantly less reliant on you and it'd be more reliant on the team that you've built. Number 3, it would happen faster because you would have more barrels that were firing concurrently, moving things forward. And those pieces, when put together, you have to then ask yourself from an opportunity cost perspective, what other activity could I be doing that would have the possibility of 10xing my company, doing it faster, and increasing the enterprise value multiple? That's not that. And if you can't find one, then it means you're working on the wrong stuff. And I think that is one of those great litmus tests of like, if I can find something, and I'll give you a really simple one that's not the talent based here. Something as simple as calling your leads. So there's tons of research that suggests that you can 4 or 5x your conversion of leads by calling them within 60 seconds of them opting in for any product you have. If you have all of these priorities that you have across the company, does any of them have the high likelihood of 4 or 5xing your business immediately with very low cost of doing so? Less so than just calling the leads within 60 seconds. If the answer is no, then by God, why are you not calling all your leads within 60 seconds? The follow-up question would be like, well, I don't have enough people to call our leads within 60 seconds. So then we'd say, okay, what is 4x the revenue of your company worth? Okay. What does it cost to hire one person whose only job is to just call the leads? Now, I recently talked to a restoration company. So they did water damage for homes when they got hit by storms. And he told me, he said he was converting 55% of his leads, not calls, leads. And I was like, how on earth are you doing this? And I was like, well, how many leads a day do you get? And he said 2 or 3. I was like, okay. So what's the process? He's like, oh, it's really simple. My aunt, I pay her $60,000 a year, and she has only one job. She has no responsibility in the company besides the moment a lead comes in, you stop having sex with your husband, you stop cooking, you stop loving your child, and you immediately call the lead. That's the only responsibility. She just has to make 3 calls a day at the moment the leads come in. And he pays her $60,000, and that brings in millions of dollars of revenue. And so you're not going to pay for it out of the dollars you have now. You're going to pay for it out of the dollars that you're going to make that you're not making yet because you haven't done it yet. And so pin in that. Back to the people. I think the hardest time, we call this the swamp at acquisition.com, but it's usually between like 1 and 3 million is the swamp. And I think there's a numbers reason for why it's such a painful period for entrepreneurs. Let's say 1 million for simple math. if you have $1 million business, let's say that you have 20% margins. So that means you're making $200,000 a year in profit. For you to get an A player, it's probably going to cost you 100% of your profit to get that A player. And so you'll have what appears to be an impossible choice. You'll have, do I sacrifice